Hi there, and welcome to another edition of the Gersnet Weekly Podcast, the independent Rangers podcast, which is brought to you by fans for fans, and where the content is free. It's a bonus preview show tonight on the Gersnet Podcast. We're going to have a look at the Celtic game, vital game at Ibrox tomorrow. So we'll have a wee look at that and some of the other stuff through the week as well, with the St Mirren game last week. And we'll have a wee chat about the commemorations for the Ibrox Disaster, the 50th anniversary of the Ibrox Disaster. We'll have a look at that. If it's the first time listening to the pod or watching the pod, because we've got the cameras off tonight, we would ask you to subscribe. We're approaching 4,000 subscribers now. The last I checked, we're in the sort of, only got about 100 to go. So a big thanks to everyone who's subscribed so far. And if you haven't done so already, we would ask you to do so. The podcast is live tonight. It's the Friday night, I think. I'm losing track of the days during Christmas holidays and all that. So it's a Friday night. We're live tonight, but the pod will be available to download and stream on a variety of platforms, including Acast, iTunes, YouTube, Castbox, Stitcher, and Spotify. So it's time to bring in my guest, which is Ross Bennett, and he's sitting there in his wee cubby hole, looking very happy. How are you, Ross?
I'm good. I've got to go with the most plain background I can find, because I know that the natural instinct is to slag each other for the things that you can see. For example, that microwave looks like it's older than I am. I'm trying to read the inscription on the wee heart that's hanging on the wall behind your head. And
you don't want to read that. It revolves around wine. It was my wife that got that, and I'll pass on the message about the microwave. She'll be happy with that. She'll be passing on her regards, because it is literally brand new. So, so you're way off for that one. So, how was your Christmas, Ross? Was Santa good to you? Did you get everything that you wanted?
Santa good to me. Yeah, it was good. We got a puppy a few weeks back, so Santa was very good to the puppy. Every present that was addressed to Ross was actually for the puppy. But it was good. I mean, it was all sort of a wee bit pared back. Obviously, just me and my other half. Can't visit any family down here in London. Can't really go anywhere. But all of the stress and all the pressure and arguments and all that, totally out the window. It's actually quite nice in the end. How about yourself?
Quite chilled. Yeah, quite chilled. Very different this year. My wife was working, actually. She's a nurse, so she was working on Christmas Day. So it was just me and the kids for the majority of it. And then she came in sort of later on at night and, had her tea a bit later on. So a bit quieter this year. But, there's bonuses with that as well. You know what I mean? It's not all bad. How are you feeling about tomorrow before we get on to the agenda? How you look at the agenda? A bit nervous for tomorrow? Are you feeling okay?
I don't know. A bit mixed. I think, we were chatting just before we came live on air 3 or 4 weeks ago. You'd say bring it on. We'll steamroll with them. But as the game gets closer, they seem to be finding a bit of form. We're not quite as dominant as we maybe were in games a few months back. Mixed. I'm looking forward to it. I still think we'll win. And this is a huge game. This is a big old firm in the context of the season, in the context of Scottish football. First Old Firm of the the new year. It's a big game. So the normal butterflies, but battle fever is well and truly on.
Hey, before we get started, I should probably point out this is the first show of 2021. So Happy New Year to everyone who watches and listens to us. And a big thanks, because 2020 was, it was a difficult year for everybody. But I think when lockdown kicked in, a lot of people were looking for podcasts. I was certainly one of those. I started listening to new podcasts. And we got a wee spike in sort of subscribers and listeners. So in a sort of perverse way, it was quite a positive year in that front for us at Gersnet. So a big thanks to everyone that's tuned in. If we've helped you through, it's been a kind of strange few months, then, that's great. And we're glad we're doing that for you. So first game of 2021 tomorrow, but I thought we would look at the last game of 2020 before we got really into things, Ross. St Mirren on Wednesday night. Now, I was quite nervous about this going into it because of the result there a couple of weeks ago. But I went out for a walk up Demai the other day, and I had to put petrol in the car, and it came to £55. And the minute I saw 55, I was just like, we're winning the day, and the confidence was back up again. So after that, I felt quite confident. Up the hill, came back down, feeling really good. All the sort of nerves that I'd felt prior to that were gone, and justifiably so. A fairly decent performance and a good result.
Yeah, it was controlled, wasn't it? It was quite resolute and quite professional, I thought. reasonably lucky with both goals. I mean, obviously a big deflection for the first goal, taking it over. Jack Annick, who probably went to ground a bit earlier than he should have done. And obviously the big Haddy of a centre-half for St Mirren Shaughnessy, giving the ball away so easily for Morelos to nip in and score the second. A touch of fortune about both goals. But, we did what we had to do. Once we were 2 up, we controlled the game. I mean, the thing about Rangers is that once we get that lead, a lot of the time it's not that fun to watch anymore because it's so controlled, it's so professional. And my brother was texting me at the time saying, why are we doing all these sideways passes? Why are we so negative, passing it back to the keeper? You go, we've got a massive game coming up on Saturday. We're 2-0 up. Just control it, just see the game out and be professional. And, it was game management from about 45 minutes onwards. It wasn't the most enjoyable game to watch that we've had this season, but another 3 points in the only place that we've been beaten this season. I was really, really pleased at the end of that game.
I mean, I think part of this is down to the fact that it's been so long since we've won a title. I think some supporters forget what's involved, and because we've been playing so well in the early stages of the season and just battering everybody out of sight, now that we've hit this stage where we're still winning and we're deserving to win, and some of the games like Wednesday we're winning fairly comfortably, but because we're not battering teams, the nerves are starting to show. And I think Walter Smith especially, when you look through his tenure at the club, the amount of 1-0 wins that he got and 2-1 wins that you just beat the other team, you scrape through. It doesn't matter who it is, you just scrape through and go on to the next game. And you're not going to batter teams every single week over 38 games. You know what I mean? You're going to have games where you just get a win and that's it. And it felt like one of those, as you say, we got 2-0 up. And then just controlled it after that. But I wanted to talk about Jim Goodwin made some interesting comments prior to the game about referees being brave enough to award penalties against Rangers. Now, firstly, his side got a penalty in the previous game. And secondly, it just seemed like a strange thing to say. What were your thoughts on that?
Yeah, it came out as a little bit bitter. It's a shame, actually, because I mean, it's rare that I'll praise anyone in Scottish football outside the Rangers, but I actually think he's a good manager. I think he's set up his St Mirren side really quite nicely. They don't have a huge budget. They don't have the most gifted players, but they gave us a game in the Cup the other week. They set up to give us a game, and were it not for 2 errors from them, it could have been a much tighter affair. So I was disappointed to hear him say that. I mean, there was sort of just no call for it. And when it comes straight after a loss like that, it just stinks of sour grapes. I cannot think, you try and think, obviously, you take the blue tinted specs off and try and think logically and rationally back over the course of the season. I can't actually remember too many penalty claims against Rangers that have gone not given. Obviously, there was all the talk about the Yanis Hadji high boot a week or so ago. I think it's pretty clear that probably shouldn't have been a penalty because there was no contact with the player. But you can see why there would be debate about that. But other than that, there's not been a huge amount of kind of marginal calls that Rangers have got away with one. Certainly no more so than for any other team or any sort of number that would stand out as being something untoward going on. So a little bit strange. I don't really know what he's trying to achieve with a comment like that, because St Mirren won't be playing Rangers for a number of weeks now. So it's unlikely that he's thinking, right, in 12 weeks' time when we play them again, I want to be the beneficiary of, put the pressure on refs and get them to give calls in our favour. So is he trying to make the referee more favourable to Celtic's penalty decisions on Saturday? I don't know, but maybe think he was a bit of a fanny.
It was strange, and it kind of fell into that manufactured controversy. And there always seems to be something in most Rangers games now. They always seem to be looking for anything. I mean, the Yanis Hadji one, Dermot Gallagher on Sky Sports, former Premiership referee, who just happens to be a Celtic fan. He was pretty conclusive in saying that because there was no contact, it's not a penalty. The very worst it was would be an indirect free kick because of dangerous play. But, you get this manufactured, it was a penalty. And I just found Jim Goodwin's comments a bit strange. And my fear is that it carries on till tomorrow. You know what I mean? That, if there's any sort of 50-50 decisions in the box, then will referees be thinking, some of the comments that have been going on in the media. On to the 2 goal scorers, the 2 guys that are very sort of in different form at the moment. Kemar Roof scored again, really seems to be hitting form, 9 goals. I think in as many games. He really seems to be, looking like he's got a proper signing and going to be an important player for us this season.
Absolutely. He's sort of at that age now where he needs to make it work because, he went to Anderlecht and it never really came off for him. He's not 22, 23 years old. He's actually in the second half of his career now, probably. So he knows that there's a lot at stake for his career if things don't work out at Rangers. And I don't know what you think when he comes across in his interviews, but he comes across as a very serious guy, a very hard-working and professional guy. And I think that's paying off. He's scored. I was going to make a point earlier about how Rangers have won a number of different types of games. We've won games by 4 or 5 goals. We've won games like the other night at St Mirren where it was less attractive, but we were just comfortable. We've won games like the Dundee United game where we've had to come back and be a bit more of a battle. Kemar Roofe kind of sums that up because he scores different types of goals in different types of games. He can score the wonder goal. Obviously, we remember the wonder goal against Liège, but there was also the goal against Benfica that he scored where he rattled it in from outside the box. He scored tap-ins, he scored snapshots, and now he's scored the one-on-ones as well. So he really does seem like a proper player. I can imagine that the financial outlay on him would have been significant to tempt him to come to Rangers because there must have been offers for him back in England. But he's really making a name for himself, and I have to say I haven't got enough praise for the guy. I think he's genuinely a class footballer.
Yeah, and I can always look at it from a sort of perspective of if I was playing in the same team as that guy, what would I think of him? And he just looks to me like someone that you would want in your team. When you heard his name in the team sheet, you'd be like, yes, he's in the team. He strikes me as that type, very sort of team focused. On to Morelos, who has not enjoyed quite as much, success this season as he did last season. He was practically unplayable at points last season. He got the first goal in 9 games for him. As I say, it's not quite been coming off from this season, but back on the score sheet, good to see and good for his confidence.
Yeah, I think
especially going into tomorrow, and the thing that
it's we're kind of with Morelos against Celtic. He didn't score obviously in his first 4, 5, or 6 games, and then it becomes a bit of a thing.
Yeah.
I think we're on 13 games or something now that he's not scored against them. It is what it is. It's obviously a shame for him. You can see how it affects him. I think you and I were both there at the League Cup final last year where he missed the penalty. So it is what it is. I was really pleased for him to score the other day against St Mirren, as someone made a comment that's the kind of goal he actually usually misses, where he's got so much time. But he did really well. He picked the ball up, he ran onto it, he picked his spot, and he dispatched it really professionally. You expect your striker, especially a striker as competent as Morelos, to score goals like that. There's no excuse for missing a goal like that. So I was pleased for him because I actually think he did have a patch where he wasn't scoring goals and he wasn't playing well, and he rightfully found himself out of the team. But the last 2 or 3 games, either when he started or he's been brought on as a sub, I think he's done really, really well. I think he's been unlucky not to score, but he's transitioned away from being the key prime goal scorer into a much more of a team player over the last probably 18 months. And I think his contribution in the last 2 or 3 games where he's come in has been excellent. He's played really, really well. So I'm pleased for him. It was, he still had a job to do when obviously he had to run 20 yards with the ball and finish it, and he did that really professionally. He did everything you could ask for. So it's big for his confidence going into tomorrow. He would love a goal, of course he would, but whether it happens or not, I do think he tends to play well against Celtic. He enjoys the occasion, so I think he'll probably start. I think it'll be him and Roofe. I think that Wednesday showed that that's a good pairing, so bring it on.
Before we move on to the big game tomorrow, Ross, a wee mention for Allan McGregor. His 400th appearance for the club. First goalkeeper since Peter McCloy to hit that that number in terms of appearances. And when you consider he was away for the club for a good number of years, after 2012. Now, he did upset some supporters at the time when the way he left the club and all the rest of it, him and Naismith and a few others. And, I think it was a raw time for everybody involved. And, I think supporters maybe need to get the full sort of detail of what happened at that time and what players were faced with before they can really, pass judgment. But putting that to one side, he's been a tremendous servant for Rangers over the years. I think there's a case to say in my lifetime, and we've had some good goalkeepers, he's arguably the best Rangers keeper in my lifetime.
He's certainly in the conversation with Gorham and Kloss, for me anyway. So he's been a wonderful servant to the club. He doesn't seem to be declining. That's the thing. He's obviously pushing on in terms of age, and I think his contract does expire at the end of this season, and there'll be a question as to what does he want to do and what does the club want to do. But he isn't getting any worse. He's not fading away with age. He's still an excellent shot stopper. And over the last 2 years, I think Morelos and McGregor are the reason that we did so well in Europa League, getting to the group stage both times. So, I think he's been outstanding. He's come a very, very long way. One thing that I always wonder, and I don't know if you have a view on this, Colin, is why did it never really happen for him at the top level outside of Scotland? Obviously he had a decent career with Hull, and I think with Cardiff, and then a difficult time out in Turkey. But for a player that's done so well for us over so many years and shown such consistency, I've never worked out why he couldn't make it work at a top club down in England.
I think sometimes I don't think it's down to ability. Sometimes people just go somewhere, and it could be an external thing. He's maybe not settled in the area, and sometimes clubs just suit certain players. I've heard some players say when they've went to other clubs outside Rangers that Kevin Thompson's quite big on this. That he kind of struggled when he went to, was it Middlesbrough? Kevin Thompson went, because the same demand wasn't there, and I do think, I remember at the time sort of chatting about when Kevin Thompson first signed for the club, that he was the one struggling a wee bit with that demand, but once he got used to it, that's what he expected. And so when he went to other clubs and that same sort of demand to win wasn't there, just don't enjoy it as much. So there could be a number of reasons, but I don't think it's any reflection on his actual ability, because I think we've seen international level in the Champions League with Rangers, and domestically with Rangers, he's different gravy, really. Right, before we talk about the big game tomorrow, I'm contractually obliged, even though I don't have a contract, to highlight a competition that Gersnet have on at the moment. We have a partnership with Football Prizes, and Frankie put out a tweet today at about 7:30 to give you a chance to win some Steven Gerrard memorabilia. It's a sort of frame top, built-in LED lighting. So to win it, it's an impressive bit of kit. To win it, it's a raffle ticket, £5.95. There are only 99 tickets available. So if you buy one of those raffle tickets, you're in with a chance of winning it. The competition ends on Wednesday, the 13th of January, which I believe is a week on Wednesday. So to be in with a chance of winning that through Football Prizes, get onto their website and buy one of the tickets at £5.95, or just have a wee look on Frankie's Twitter. As I said, he was tweeting about it today. You'll get all the details there. So that's my contractual obligations finished, Ross. We can talk about the football now. Right. So tomorrow, the big game at Ibrox tomorrow. As is always the case with these games, they tend to get hyped up, maybe beyond what's actually at stake tomorrow. I hear some people saying that if Rangers win tomorrow, that's it. If Celtic win tomorrow, they're back in it, and Rangers are officially crumbling and in crisis. It is a big game, but nothing's getting won or lost tomorrow. There's a long, long way to go. 18 games to go. There's a lot of football to be played yet.
Nothing's getting won or lost tomorrow, but I think it's a massive game. I really do. I think it's, if the tables were turned and we were potentially going 19 points behind.
Yeah.
Even with 3 games in hand, you look at the goal difference. That's, call it 20 points behind, because the goal difference is so superior. They win their 3 games in hand. That takes it back to 10. Call it 11 points. It's a big lead, and the form that we've shown this season, conceding 5 goals, dropping 4 points in our opening 19 games. It's if I don't believe that tomorrow decides the league. And I think whatever happens tomorrow, you made a comment there, if Celtic win, they're back in it. I think if Celtic lose, they're still in it. because anything could happen, and this group of players doesn't have experience of winning competitions. Unfortunately, we don't have that experience other than McGregor and Davis in the squad, who have obviously won the league with us before. That's something that we lack, is experience of winning trophies. So whatever happens tomorrow, Celtic are still in the title race. But if we do close, do end tomorrow with a good result and a victory, then you'd be a foolish man, I think, to bet against Rangers. It'll be as close as it's been for, obviously, a decade, really. We've been waiting for this title. I think tomorrow is a really, really important step. And I think you'd be hard pressed to find any Celtic fans, if we won the game tomorrow, any Celtic fans who would hold much hope rationally of still winning the title. So nothing's won or lost. And I know that Gerrard will be hammering that message home. Stay professional, whatever happens. There's a long way to go. At the end of the day, every game, in terms of the points in the league table, every game is important. It's all 3 points. That's all it is. We know that's not really the case, and that this one means more than a Ross County or St Mirren. But I believe this is one of the biggest games we've had for a number of years.
I get that, but I am very much with Steven Gerrard on this, and there's two reasons why. One, I think we've got quite a tricky January coming up. We have to travel to Pittodrie, we have to go to Easter Road, and even Fir Park. I know that Motherwell recently, got rid of Stephen Robinson as manager, so there might be a reaction in terms of whoever comes in. So I think we've got a tricky January. And also, when the league ended last season, we were 13 points behind with a game in hand. We had to play them twice. I still felt, even though it was unlikely, it was mathematically possible for us to catch them. So I would want the players to adopt that attitude, that even if they win tomorrow, there is a lot of football, because I think any complacency could put us in a dodgy place. I think there was maybe a wee bit of that last season. Everybody talks about Dubai, and every time they go to Dubai, I just think maybe too many in the squad felt after we beat Celtic on the 29th last year at Celtic Park that we were the real deal, and I don't think they came back quite with the same mindset. So I want to just keep going until we're over the line, if you know what I mean. And again, I think that part of that is brought about by the fact it's been a while since we've been in this position, and as you say, we don't have a lot of players that have been over the course before. So I just want them to keep that mentality that, Ross, see if there's 5 games to go and we're 25 points clear, I'll still be nervous, you know what I mean? I'll still be thinking, even though it's mathematically impossible for them to catch us, I'll be like, there's some way we can mess this up. So yeah, I want us just to maintain that sort of attitude and keep the professionalism going. It's the second game, the second Old Firm game without fans, in these strange times. You could argue that we were the beneficiary of that the last time, going to Celtic Park. It wasn't the same, I think it was like 60, 70 minutes before there was the first booking, if there's 60,000 fans in there, but that's not the case. There's a wee bit more edge to the game. So you could argue we maybe got the sort of benefit of that the last time. So is that reversed this time? Do you feel that Celtic will come here not fearing it as much because, there's not going to be 55,000 Rangers supporters in there?
I mean, I don't know that Celtic really would be fearing a trip to Ibrox in normal times anyway. I mean, as much as I hate to say it, they have experience of winning titles, and they all have experience of winning games at Ibrox with fans in. So I don't know. I don't think it's going to have a big impact. I think that Gerrard's professionalism that he's instilled in the squad is going to be we have been the beneficiaries of no fans. I think we've discussed this countless times on the podcast this season. Having no fans in has helped us, and it's helped us at home and it's helped us away. It's helped us go to places like going over to Celtic and getting a fairly comfortable and routine victory. But it does help us at home as well, because they don't have the pressure that the misplaced pass that gets a boo and fans on the backs. So I don't know. I don't see Celtic capitalising on that too much. I really don't. I think still that the lack of fans is going to play into our hands. It's a shame. I think
Yeah,
I'd have been on a plane up today. I'd have been getting a train up or something, and I'd be taking my seat there tomorrow. And I'm really disappointed that I can't. And I know that you would be doing the same. it's a real shame because there's so many good things happening this season for Rangers, and we can't be there to enjoy it. So I'm disappointed, obviously, but all of that disappointment will go if we win even 1-0 tomorrow. It is what it is. We're all used to this by now. We know the drill. We know how to log into Rangers TV and watch it and shout and swear at home. So I don't think it'll make too much of a difference.
Yeah, I mean, I took it. I actually managed to get to a game last week. I was at a Cayman game. They were playing Brora Rangers on Boxing Day, and I was there kind of covering the game from a media perspective. So that's how I sort of gained access. And I have to say, I mean, the game was it was abandoned after 45 minutes because of the weather, but it didn't feel the same. Just with no fans there, and that's Cayman juniors who maybe get, I don't know, 300-400 in, if that. It just there was a strange feeling to it, and it is a shame the situation at the moment. But I suppose it is what it is. Steven Gerrard had his presser I think it was today, Ross. So on the injury front, no fresh injuries for St Mirren, but Ryan Jack still out, Scott Arfield out after he picked up that injury against Motherwell. Two sort of key players and two, I think this is a key thing, two Scottish players who know what this game is all about. Is that a big miss for Rangers?
One Scottish, one Canadian.
Okay, I'll give you that. Livingston, West Lothian, Canada.
Whereabouts in New Brunswick is that?
Anyway,
look, they are both a big miss because there are two players who have performed well in Old Firm games over the last 18 months. Two players who I think have both scored in Old Firm games in the last couple of years, and the players have done really well for us over the last couple of seasons as well. And I think that Ryan Jack in particular, he adds so much calmness and assuredness to the midfield. Not the most creative player, but Scott Arfield is pretty creative, and I think the two of them work really nicely together. That said, you look at the midfield tomorrow is probably going to be Stephen Davis as the proverbial quarterback, followed by Glenn Kamara and Joe Aribo. I mean, incredibly capable players. So I'm not too worried. I still think pound for pound we have the better midfield. I think we'll win those midfield battles. But yeah, it's a shame for both of them. Obviously, Ryan Jack. There's a lot of questions going around now. Actually, what's the problem with this knee? It's been out a lot longer than any of us expected. We don't really have any clarity when he's coming back. So it's a shame. It's a shame that we'll miss both of them. But I think we have more than adequate replacements. Glenn Kamara is a big game player. We've spoken about this before on the show. Glenn Kamara thrives in the big games. He's done well in Old Firms before, and he does well in Europe. So I have absolutely no concerns with the players that will play in midfield tomorrow.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I do kind of worry because it's two guys that know what the game's about, that will maybe just miss that wee edge. But I suppose we've got Stephen Davis in there, who certainly knows what it's all about. Also, his presser today, interesting that, Gerrard's looking for, I think it's his third successive win against Celtic. He won at Celtic Park last December 2-1. He won the game in October there 2-0, and even in the game in the cup final last year, we outplayed them and we should have won that game. And he was talking about the sort of change that's happened since Gerrard and his staff have arrived at the club. Before he arrived, we were on the end of some pretty heavy pounding from Celtic. Then he came in and we lost the first 1-0, but it was close and it was tight. And then we started winning, and then we're starting to win at Celtic Park. And again, it ties in with this thing that we've talked about before, just the constant improvement. We're improving all the time. In Europe we're improving, and the results against Celtic are improving. So it's testament to Gerrard and his staff that we are where we are in this. Because before he came, we would begin into tomorrow thinking, here we go, another routine horsing for that mob across the road. So you have to give them credit for getting us to this stage, where we are at this moment in time.
Absolutely. I mean, if it wasn't Steven Gerrard, that would probably be because Derek McInnes had taken the job, and I would have no confidence at all in Derek McInnes leading us against Celtic. So, real credit to them. I mean, I'm not sure. I'm sure you'll be able to tell me, when was the last time that a Rangers manager won 3 in a row against them?
Off the top of my head,
Yes.
can't tell you. So it's a big one for him. Yeah,
it's big, but you have to think back. It's incredibly rare that either side of the Old Firm would win all 4 games against the other in one season. Even in Brendan Rodgers and their unbeaten season a few years ago, we still had the Clint Hill game where we managed to take a point.
Yeah.
So it's very, very rare for one side of the Old Firm to assert dominance over the whole season, which is why, obviously, if the result doesn't go that way tomorrow, even if it's a draw, it's not a reason to panic. It's not a reason to get nervous, because it's a bit of a media cliche, but the form book can go out of the window in games like these, and we've seen that happen for both sides, where you've come into the game not in good form, but you've just managed to rally together and get a result. So, Gerrard has done, I think, wonders. We could speak all night about the strides we've made under Steven Gerrard. I think you can see the difference as well. It's again something we've spoken about before. His reaction when they win in the East End this season compared to when we won in the East End last season, grabbing the camera and really celebrating it. Obviously, difference because there was no fans, but I think the difference there actually runs a bit deeper than that. So we can discuss this all day, but it does fill you with confidence. I mean, who would you rather have in the dugout tomorrow? Who would you rather have leading you tomorrow? Steven Gerrard or Neil Lennon?
Well, I know my answer. Right, looking a wee bit beyond tomorrow, before we move on, we're at Pittodrie next week. And again, Steven Gerrard mentioned this in his press conference. There's like 8 days between tomorrow's game and the next game at Pittodrie. That seems, compared to the recent sort of hectic schedule that we've had, a good opportunity to rest some legs and maybe get people fit again.
Yeah, definitely. Unless this counts as our winter break, in which case...
No. We're not doing a winter break.
Yeah.
Winter breaks are banned.
I know. Do you know, actually, as a fan, I'm a bit annoyed because we've been spoiled having a game every 3 or 4 days for 3 months now. It's been wonderful, especially because we keep winning them. But it's not a bad thing if we can try and get Ryan Jack back in, try and get Scott Arfield back up to fitness. It'll be really important. Pittodrie, always a horrible place to go. That. I'm sure it's the same for you. That fills me with nerves every time we got to Pittodrie. I don't enjoy those games at all. I don't think anyone at Auchenhowie will be complaining for an 8-day rest. It's a holiday for them.
Yeah. When I heard that today, I hadn't really looked ahead to the sort of fixture list, and when I saw that, I thought it was a good sign. A couple of days off. I think Gerrard said today he was hoping to give the players a couple of days off, regardless of the result, and then base the planning on next week based on what happens tomorrow, get them in sort of Monday, Tuesday and get them going again. Ross, sort of conscious of time, the 50th anniversary tomorrow of the Ibrox Disaster. Steven Gerrard, he was speaking about it today. Someone who himself is connected to, a similar sort of tragedy with Hillsborough. He'd been a Liverpool boy, and I believe his cousin was a victim of the Hillsborough disaster. Club announced today that they had planned a sort of major service at Glasgow Cathedral. That's now not going to happen. There'll be tributes visible at the game all day tomorrow. Club came out today with a commemorative crest with the words "Always Remembered" on it and the date of the disaster. The club has asked supporters to stay away, which in the current climate you would understand. They understand that obviously people maybe want to make their way to John Gregg's statue or whatever and pay their respects, but they're asking people to stay away. And they put something out today asking supporters for an alternative gesture to make a donation, a £10 donation if they could, to St Andrew's First Aid, who were obviously heavily involved on the day. So I mean, I was 2 years away from being born when the disaster happened. I had family there though. A few of my uncles were there. One never went back. My Uncle James never went back to any football after it. It's hard to believe it's 50 years, but it's always a sort of heavy time of the year, for the club and for the supporters, and obviously the families involved. Yeah,
every Rangers fan has a connection to that day. Everyone will have. I have a grandfather who was there. and was one of those who didn't know what had happened and went to the pub after the game. And, you know, I remember my dad telling me about they were all sat at home, they'd not heard from him because he had no idea he was in the pub, didn't know what was going on. And everyone has a story like that. Even I'm going to bucket you and me into the same age group here because neither of us were alive at the time. I know.
I'm old enough to be your dad.
even folk like us, even fans like us who weren't alive, we all have some connection to that incident, and I'm proud actually of how much the club has been talking about this, and obviously the media has been picking up on it heavily because it's the 50th anniversary, but it is kind of penetrating the mainstream media a little bit more. And I think that, again, particularly living down here in London, you start to see the Ibrox disaster wouldn't really be mentioned in the media. Obviously in Scotland it is kind of mentioned every year at this time, but in England it doesn't really get a mention. And then there was an article that I read a couple of days ago from an English regional paper talking about football's forgotten disaster, which is kind of how it's seen down here. You know, 66 people died that day, and it's a staggering number, but it doesn't really get spoken about. So I'm glad to see the amount of traction and the amount of interest and just people talking about it again, because you know, we're 50 years on. Rangers fans will remember this in another 50 years' time. You know, in 50 years' time, I'll be about to turn 80. So if I'm still around, I'll be remembering it, and my kids and my grandkids will be remembering it. Because you can still see the pictures, and it's such an awful thing to even comprehend. It's actually quite difficult to imagine how it happened and what it must have been like. So it's so important that the club keeps that alive and the club remembers it properly. I'm glad to see that there was something planned, and the club was trying to remember in the correct way with something as grand as the service at Glasgow Cathedral. Obviously, a great shame that couldn't happen, but I think it's quite touching actually to see in the majority of cases the response that we're also getting from Scottish media, other Scottish football clubs, and you know, Celtic obviously put out quite a touching, quite a moving account of that day as well, and asking their fans to remember. And tomorrow is a very poignant and sombre and special day for Rangers.
I was involved in a wee bit of a project prior to lockdown, and I was doing a wee bit of research on the Ibrox disaster. And that thing you're talking about, families not known, that was a constant through every account that I read. And you have to remember, it's totally different times. It's 1971. You know, there's no mobile phones. There's no 24-hour news channels, all that kind of a thing. So it really did. And my uncles who were at the game were the same. You know, they managed to get out the crush, and they just thought, right, well, we'll just get involved in our normal routine. Mm-hmm. They went to the pub. I know another guy. I used to live next door to a guy, Billy, who. He was just a teenager at the time, and he came down Stairway 13 and he broke his glasses. But he was not involved in the crush. I think he was out before it all started, but he broke his glasses and was so scared of going home and getting a row for his mother that he just went and stayed the night at his pals and never phoned and let anybody know where he was. So his family were just in a total flummox, you know, and that was the thing when I was looking through all these accounts in the Mitchell Library. That was a constant theme. People just didn't know where family members were, and family members who weren't involved in the disaster and weren't involved in the crush were doing their normal routine, totally unaware that anything had happened. So a really, really strange night. Final comment on the night, and it's kind of sad to sort of finish on this, talking about that tweet you were talking about from Celtic and you know, the nice account that they put out of that day. You know, I'll look through some of the replies. Was just pretty horrific. Now you would have to say that, you know, the majority of the stuff was coming from Celtic supporters, but even some of the comments from some Rangers supporters getting involved, really poor. And you know, I don't get, and I never will get, how people find these kind of things funny, regardless of what club's involved. You know, 66 people died. You know, I mean, I would never laugh at anything like, you know, the Hillsborough disaster or the Bradford fire. You know, I can remember that one. It just seems, and I think it's got worse over the last few years. The first real incident I can remember of this nature was the 20th anniversary game in 1991, and there was a minute's silence, and the Brimlin Road end kind of booed it all the way through. And that was the first real incident I can really recall that sort of had a go, that saw the Ibrox disaster as sort of fair game, and we can have a go at that. And I would say over the last 10 years, it's got worse, you know, and it's not just Celtic fans now, you know, you see some Aberdeen fans and all that getting involved. Pretty pathetic stuff, Ross. That's probably the best way of putting it.
It's tragic. I mean, just be better. Just be a better person, you know.
Yeah.
It's not just that 66 folk died. It's the manner in which they died as well. You know, it's incomprehensible how distressing that is. But you know, you can be anonymous, and you can tweet something. You can tweet, you know, quite hurtful and nasty things, and no one will ever know who it was. And then, you know, I have a right to say that if I want to, and it's freedom of speech. It's such a murky and just upsetting area to get into. But just be better. Why bother? What are you contributing to society if that's all you can? If that's all you can do? And these are undoubtedly folk who weren't alive at the time, probably never been to a game in their lives, but it's just easy to wind up folk on the internet, and it's a real shame.
Well, I mean, here's hoping that the team go out and get us a result, and what will be a very difficult day for some families of the victims of that day. Ross, looking at the time there, and I think we can just call it quits there. So that's all for tonight's preview edition of the Gersnet Weekly Podcast. Hope you've enjoyed that. A wee bit of extra content for you. We'll be back on Sunday night. I believe Ross is hosting and David Wren is on with myself as a guest. And we'll obviously be looking at the big game tomorrow. In the meantime, get yourself onto the Gersnet website and forums at www.gersnet.co.uk. Guys, as I say to you every week that I'm hosting now, you know, strange times. We're all tier 4. Look after one another. Stay safe. And until next time, bye for now.